Serious Survivor here, and this video is going to focus on navigation without a map and compass, or at least without a compass. We're going to look at multiple ways to find our orientation or our direction of travel basically without using a compass. Now, a map is always an important part of navigation, but assuming these are not available, there are alternative ways that allow us to navigate in the direction that we need to travel. We're going to look at navigation in both the daylight hours and the nighttime hours in both the northern and southern hemispheres. Make sure to be familiar with your local terrain, landmarks, and structures, and if using an analog watch for navigation, make sure the watch is set to accurate time, not compensating for daylight savings time. Knowing which hemisphere you're in at that current moment in time is extremely important. For most people, we know which hemisphere we're in. If you are above or north of the equator, then you're in the northern hemisphere. South or below the equator, the southern hemisphere. For those in America, we are in the northern hemisphere. If unsure, just look at the night sky and search for the North Star, Polaris. If it is visible, then you are in the northern hemisphere. If you cannot locate it in the night sky, then you're in the southern hemisphere. The first method, 1. The analog watch method in the northern hemisphere. An actual watch for this method is not necessary. You can draw a watch face on a piece of paper or with a stick in the dirt on the ground and it will work just fine. Place the watch on a level surface or face up in your palm so the watch is parallel to the ground. Point the hour hand directly towards the sun. Bisect the angle between the hour hand and the 12 o'clock mark to find south. Before noon, you'll have to measure clockwise from the 12 o'clock marking to the hour hand. After noon, you'll have to measure counterclockwise from your hour hand to the 12 o'clock mark, dissecting that angle, showing the direction of south. Method 2, the analog watch method in the southern hemisphere. Hold the watch horizontal, flat, and place the 12 o'clock marking in the direction of the sun. The key difference between the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere analog method is in the southern hemisphere is the 12 o'clock mark rather than the hour hand that you must line up with the sun. Then bisect the angle between the hour hand and the 12 o'clock mark, and this will point directly north. The exact middle of this angle is directly north. Method 3, the shadow tip method. Place a fairly straight stick in the ground so that its shadow can be easily seen. A stick 3 to 4 foot tall works really well with this, but shorter ones can be used. The more pointed or narrowed the stick is at the tip, the more accurate that this method will be. Begin by placing a small rock, coin, or other object on the tip of the shadow. Wait about 10 to 15 minutes. The shadow will have moved from west to east during this time due to the rotation of the earth. Now place a second marker, rock, or coin, stone at the tip of the second shadow. Then draw a straight line in the ground between the two marks, and this serves as your east-west line. Place your left foot on the first mark, which is the west mark. Then place your right foot on the second mark, which is the east mark. The direction you are facing in is north, which places south directly behind you, east to your right, and west to your left. This method works anywhere in the world. 4. The alternate shadow tip method for higher accuracy. Take a short stick and place it firmly into level ground. First, mark the tip of the shadow with a rock or marker of some type. Next, use a piece of string, line, rope, or something similar to measure the exact distance of the shadow. The first reading should be taken in the morning or at least an hour before noon. Sit back and monitor the shadow as it begins to shrink before midday and then begins to grow or extend shortly after noon. Once the shadow has reached the exact length of the string or rope that you took the initial measurement with, then place a second marker or rock at the tip of the second shadow. This method can take a few hours for the most accurate reading. Draw a straight line from the first mark to the second mark, and this is your east-west line. Placing your left foot on the first mark and your right foot on the second mark, this will once again put north at our front, south to our rear, east to our right, and west to our left. Number 5. Navigation by motion tracking of any star using 2 sticks in the northern hemisphere at night. First, get 2 sticks, one longer than the other, as straight as you can find. We can place these sticks in the ground and line up the 2 tips of the sticks with any star in the sky and track the motion of that star to determine which way we are facing. Find a flat, open area on the ground. Place the sticks approximately 2 to 4 feet apart. Then find a bright star in the sky. Push the shorter stick into the ground and line it up with the star. Place the taller stick in the ground between the shorter stick and the star so the tip lines up in a straight line between the star and the shorter stick. We'll need to wait several minutes to give the star some time to move. Check back after a while and look over the tips of the sticks, and you'll notice the position of the star has changed. Although the position of the star itself is not changing, this is just simply due to the rotation of the Earth. If the star appears to have moved up, then we're facing east. If it moves down, we're facing west. If it moves right, we're facing south. And if it moves left, we're facing north. The star will most likely have moved in a combination of directions, like up and to the right or down and to the left. So we'll have to estimate our direction at this point by how far the star has moved in each of the directions. But it still gives us a good indicator of which direction we are actually facing at this point in time. 6. The North Star, or Polaris. One of the simplest ways to navigate is to locate the North Star in the sky, but this will only be visible in the northern hemisphere. The North Star is the last star in the handle of the Little Dipper constellation. Polaris can be located by finding the Big Dipper, which is usually highly visible. The Big Dipper is comprised of 7 of the sky's brightest stars, and is found either high or low in the sky depending on the season. Remember the phrase, fall down, spring up. The Big Dipper's location will be high in the sky for spring months and low in the sky for fall months. It also rotates around the North Star. As long as you're located above 23.5 degrees north latitude, the constellation will always be above the horizon. 4 stars form the cup and 3 stars form the handle. Regardless of the season, the 2 pointer stars, or the 2 stars on the outer edge of the cup, always point to the North Star. Draw an imaginary line from the 2 pointer stars to the next brightest star in the sky, and you will find Polaris. Unlike the stars in the Big Dipper constellation, the North Star is always located at a fixed point in the sky, which leaves it never more than 1 degree off from true north. Number 7. The Southern Cross constellation in the Southern Hemisphere. In the Southern Hemisphere, the Northern Star is not visible, and there is no star that always indicates exactly north or south. But we can use the Southern Cross and its pointer stars as a guide. The Southern Cross constellation is formed by 5 stars. The 4 brightest stars form a cross that's angled or tilted a little to one side. Once we identify the 2 stars that make up the long axis of the cross, make sure to notice the distance between the 2 stars. These 2 stars, loosely speaking, form an imaginary line which points directly to a point in space that's directly above the southern pole. Follow the imaginary line from the 2 stars 5 times the distance the stars are separated from each other. It does help to use a piece of paper or wood to make 2 marks which form the distance between the 2 stars relative to you. Then make another mark which is 5 times the length of this. Hold it up in the air and line it up with the 2 stars, and at the last mark you made, draw an imaginary line to a point on the ground, and this will point in the direction of true south. Number 8. Using Orion's belt at the equator. The Orion constellation is visible from both hemispheres depending on the time of year, but it's always a permanent feature at the equator. Look for Orion's belt. Orion has several prominent stars, but the belt is 3 stars in a row, which run from east to west. The belt has a loosely speaking sword attached to it. Project a line from the tip of the sword through the middle star of the belt. This will be the general direction of north. Orion lays across the equator, the belt rises in the east and sets in the west. Number 9. Using the moon for navigation. Locate the crescent moon in the night sky. This method only works if the moon is waxing crescent or waning crescent. Will not work with the full moon, which will occur for approximately 7 days in each calendar month. The crescent phases appear towards the beginning and end of each cycle. Picture a line that runs from the 2 tips of the moon's crescent all the way down to the edge of the skyline or horizon. If you're in the northern hemisphere, the point in which the line reaches the horizon is roughly south. In the southern hemisphere, the point in which the line reaches the horizon is roughly north. Number 10, using geographic or local or environmental features. Evaluate trees for their heaviest side. Trees are rarely symmetrical. One side will be thicker than the other. Because plants need sunlight to grow, the side that gets the most sunlight will generally experience the thickest or most growth. In the northern hemisphere, the sun spends most of its time in the southern part of the sky, so the denser or thicker side of the trees will usually be facing south. In the southern hemisphere, the heavier portion of the tree usually points north. In order to accurately decide which side of the tree is heaviest, walk around it a few times. Look for the densest area on the tree or the thicker parts. It's easier to use this method on lone trees in open fields, because in wooded areas, trees will compete for sunlight and it's not as obvious as to which side will be thicker or less. You can also look for moss on trees. In most cases, moss grows on the side of the tree which is normally shaded. In the northern hemisphere, that means you can usually find moss on the side of the trees that point north. In the southern hemisphere, you can usually find moss growing on the side of the tree that points south. It's important to keep in mind that there are many other factors that will create shady conditions that could encourage moss to grow on other sides of the tree. Trees that are shaded by other trees in wooded areas are trees that grow on slopes. It's good to examine trees that are in more open spaces and compare more than one tree. Deciduous types tend to populate these southern slopes of hills, while coniferous types generally cover the northern sides. This phenomenon occurs in the opposite manner in the southern hemisphere. Plant life and signs may help determine the direction of travel, but it's definitely not the most precise method. These are several methods for navigating without a map and compass, as I'm sure there are many more, but the ones we discussed are tried and true methods that will help you in a survival situation should you have no other means of guidance or navigation. I hope the video helps. Thanks a lot for watching. God bless, and Seer Survivor, out.